Hey, vibrant gardeners. If you've got containers out on your patio right now, I want you to picture them for a second. Be honest. Are they thriving? Or are they doing the thing where they are just surviving? A basil plant hanging on by a thread. A tomato that gave up setting fruit back in May, June. Here's the thing. That is not what a Houston summer container garden has to look like. Your patio could be producing real food and be the prettiest thing your neighbors walk by in the exact same heat that's wilting everybody else's pots. My kids still walk out every single morning to see what's ready to pick, heat wave or not. That habit has not stopped all summer. And today, I want to show you the formula that keeps it going. So, let's talk. Let's talk about why containers struggle here more than an in-ground bed does. Because it's actually not about the plant. It's about the pot. When a plant is in ground, the surrounding soil insulates the roots. The earth stays relatively cool, a few inches down, even when it's 100 degrees outside. A container doesn't have that luxury. It's exposed on every single side. Sun hitting the walls of the pot all day long, and the soil can run 20, even 30 degrees hotter than the air temperature. You could be watering the plant every single day and still be cooking its roots. And then there is this mistake that almost everyone makes it, even without realizing it. The pot itself. Thin, dark, plastic, the kind most nursery plants come in. It soaks up the heat, holds it right against the root zone. And all of us, including me, set the pot directly on a hot concrete patio. And now you've got heat coming literally from all directions, pavement included. And that's the real reason your containers are struggling. It's not that Houston is too hot for a patio garden, it's that most containers are set up to fight the heat instead of work with it. Okay. So, here's how to fix it. You know how I always give you a simple formula for every season for your garden beds? 1 to 2 vegetables, 1 to 2 herbs, 1 to 2 flowers. Containers have their own version, scaled down to fit the pot. I want you to think 3 roles for your container. I want a nice producer, I want a plant that blooms, and then I want a plant that kind of falls over. Like, one of those hanging pots that we see in the nurseries. How it kind of aesthetically falls over, but doesn't actually fall over. Kind of a spiller. Your producer plant is going to be one of those, one that produces something you want actually. It's heat tolerant enough that it will actually fruit through Houston summer. The bloomer loves our summer and puts out prolific blooms for pollinators. It works as a double duty. It is so pretty and actually useful. And then your spiller plant is that cascades over the edge of the pot, softening the whole look, and it projects this multi-layer look. Okay, now that I gave you an idea, let me give you some of my 3 combinations that actually follow this kind of design principle. And all of this kind of produces food too. So you can actually save it and use this exact combination. So First one's what I call the salsa pot. It's a tomato, a patio variety of tomato, possibly. It is usually bred to stay small and does not grow to 6 feet tall, but it'll still fruit heavily. There are a lot of dwarfs and micro dwarf varieties of tomatoes that I actually love. For bloomers, you can try any of the compact zinnias. Thumbelina variety comes to my mind. It's a tiny plant compared to the regular zinnias, but it does produce abundant flowers. And for a spiller, let's keep it the theme, all vegetable garden theme. So, creeping thyme, trailing oregano, or you can even swap in cilantro for the cooler months. You cannot grow cilantro in summer, unfortunately, especially in Houston. So that is your salsa pot. Tomato, a herb, a trailing herb, and then a flower, a dwarf flower. Okay. For combination number 2, this is what I call a hot sauce pot. Serrano or a jalapeno pepper, or if you're one of those pepperheads, you can grow one of the super hots like a reaper or a ghost pepper. There are actually some of my favorites are some chilies from Peru. They are called ají. There's like several colors in the ají varieties, and ají amarillo is one of my favorites. It's a yellow lemon pepper that produces like literally abundantly. But yeah, any pepper for that matter. For a bloomer, for a twist, I am going to recommend a herb that actually flowers as a bloomer. You can either do dill or fennel, and they have this beautiful flowers. They are fluffy, feathery, and they pull in a ton of pollinators and predators, and doubles as a caterpillar host plant. So it's a best of 3 worlds actually. For the spillers, I'm gonna suggest a beautiful flower called nasturtiums. They are edible, both the flowers and the leaves. There are some trailing varieties that spill beautifully, and you can actually use them in salads. So that kind of fits the theme of the pot. Since I'm calling it the hot sauce pot, so I'm adding a spicy flower to the mix. Okay, the third one, it's going to be a statement pot, meaning we have a central large plant, and then you can add in a bunch of different sized plants to give it a statement piece. Okay, for the producer, I'm loving okra these days. Summer and okra, Houston summer and okra is practically inseparable. If you love okra, even if you hate okra, that is something you should still be growing, because they kind of produce like crazy. Even if you don't like it, you can give it away. I'm sure there's a huge following for okra in Houston. The leaves are nice and big and tropical, like hibiscus. Actually, they are in the same family. It literally loves our Houston summer. When every single vegetable is struggling, okra will produce like crazy. For the blooming, a short variety of pentas. These are this tiny star-shaped plants that hummingbirds actually love. So they are a very good pollinator plant, and they are very loving of our Houston heat. For the spilling, you can use maybe a sweet potato, or even some of the trading herbs. Thyme do okay in our summer heat, but they have this trading variety. Actually, if anything, I would suggest Cuban oregano. They love our heat, and they have this very strong flavor, and they have this trading texture, and it's actually a succulent like texture, and it's a really good herb. Okay, now that we have a formula and I gave you some examples of what actually to plant that fits the formula, that'll actually produce you something in the summer, let's talk about a little bit about watering. Because if you water in summer, especially a container, just like you watered in the winter or even in early spring, they are going to literally die. So most containers will need water daily, especially on our 100-degree days. Some containers actually need twice, because container mixes are designed to be designed not to hold too much water because of root rot, and containers, thanks to gravity, will release the moisture pretty fast. So some of the containers, especially the smaller containers, will need to be watered twice deeply. And my strong suggestion is do it before it gets too hot, so that the water gets a little bit of time to soak into the roots. So the plant has a little bit of moisture when it is actually hot. If not, they will be droopy, very, very droopy. And guess what? When you have tired, weak plants, who's ready to move in? Pests. So it's better to take care of your plants extra. Give them a little bit extra TLC in the summer, because pests are quite abundant here. Okay, also shades. Even though patios are suddenly more shadier than a full open garden, the timing of your shade actually matters. If you provide, or if your patio has a shade during the peak sun hours, like between 12 to 3-4 p.m., your plants have a very high chance of surviving better than if your plant has shade in early in the morning or late in the evening. Even dapple shade will work. It keeps them fruit setting instead of just surviving, especially for containers. A couple of these things actually make a very big difference. Like, lift up your pots off the concrete, like a plant pot, a plant feet type, or a caddy, so the heat from the pavement is not directly cooking the pots. And if you group your containers together, especially if they are varying height, they end up shading each other's soil, so which actually buffers the whole cluster against the worst of the afternoon. These are tiny things that actually makes a really big difference. Most of us don't even think about it that way. Okay, before today's going to be a very short episode, so before we finish, I want to tell you about my very first garden. It explains actually why I care so much about getting these tiny details right. When I first started, I started with one single tomato plant and a tiny apartment patio. It still sat in the same black pot. It came from the nursery, I think a gallon pot, I believe. And if I look back, it was so much wrong with that setup. There was so much wrong with that setup. I don't even know where to start. First, the pot was too small for the plant. I was not watering properly. I was not fertilizing it. I didn't give it enough sun. I did everything a first time gardener can do wrong. I did every mistake that can be done. And what was the end result? What was the payoff? One sad little tomato. Small, kind of ugly. I don't even know what it tasted like. Which kind of tells you everything. A good homegrown tomato is not something you actually forget, especially your first one. Okay, fast forward 10-15 years. Now I'm literally growing pounds and pounds of foods. Especially you should see my freezer. It's literally stacked with tomatoes of all shapes and sizes. I grow in raised beds, in ground containers, front yard. I've got plants in practically every single room, including my office. The biggest lesson from all of these years of growing, especially growing in containers, the bigger the container, the happier the roots. That's it. That is a thing I wish someone had told me on that apartment patio. It's not just about roots having room to spread, even though yes, that is important. It also means more soil, also means more buffer against the swings, the temperature swings. And bigger container simply means there's more mass to hold the water. And if you're like me and you grow 100 different plants and you don't need 100 little pots, you can grow just as much or sometimes more in fewer but larger, bigger containers. I actually grow trees in containers. I have several containers full of trees. And you can actually scale it to whatever space you have, whatever number of plants you have. And if you have like a really huge container, you can stack in 5 to 6 plants with different height and layer it so that it literally makes a statement. A few tall, something in the middle, and then medium height, and then some trailing. It makes a statement. It does more for how the whole thing looks than almost anything else you could do. So here's what I want you to do this week. Just pick one thing. One container on your patio, and if you can, size up while you're at it and convert it using the formula I gave you. A producer of bloomer and a spiller. Put it up above the concrete, not sitting directly, and water it early before the heat sets in. You don't have to redo your whole patio or even your whole garden this week. One pot done right will show you how much exactly this can look and produce. And actually, you will actually want to do the rest by yourself. I don't have to tell you the second time. Okay, now it's almost time to close out. If you're not sure where to start or start your gardening journey, try out my GrowSona Quiz. It is gonna give you what kind of gardening personality you are. It's a fun as well as it'll give you a nice insight to yourself. It's just going to take you 2 to 3 minutes, and it'll tell you whether you are a space-starved sprouter, time-tight tiller, a passionate gardener, or a couple more personas. and it'll point you to the right step from there. You'll find it at vibrantrainbowgardens.com//quiz. If you loved any of my previous episode, and think of this as especially the front yard design episode, this is a patio-sized version of the same idea. Similar philosophy, but a very small footprint. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Go pick out your one container, and I'll see you at the next episode. The more gardens we grow, the more vibrant our communities become. Before you go, I have one small ask. And it actually has nothing to do with algorithms or downloads. If this episode made you think of one person, a friend, a neighbor, a fellow parent, or someone who's always said, I want to grow a garden, I want to grow my own vegetables and fruits, I just don't know where to start, would you share this episode with them? This podcast grows almost entirely through word of mouth, and every share helps someone realize that gardening doesn't have to be complicated or overwhelming. It can be gentle, it can fit real life, it can start right where they are. And if you're listening and wondering what kind of gardener you are, or what your next best step actually is, I created a free quiz to help with that. It's called the GrowSona Quiz, and it helps you figure out your gardening style, your biggest challenges, and what will actually work for your season of life. Whether you're a total beginner or just need clarity. You can take it at vibrantrainbowgardens.com/quiz. And I will send you personalized guidance right after. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for helping this little garden of a podcast grow. I'll see you in the next episode.